Thank you for having me. My name is Robert Coache, C-O-A-C-H-E. I am the current owner of Hydrotech Consulting Services in Las Vegas. And in full disclosure, I'm the former Deputy State Engineer for the Division of Water Resources. I've got about 38 years experience in Nevada, water rights and water resources, all of Southern Nevada. I do not have any clients in Pahrump. I am here on no basis other than at the request of Commissioner Strickland. And I will try to keep this brief as I go through, and not going through, I won't be reading every slide as I go through it. Let's see, that's how that works. I'm just going to go through some stuff that happened in a basin. Originally it was Coyote Springs Basin, and now it's called the Lower White River Flow System, because of a bunch of other basins that were around that area were contributing water to this flow system. And I'm going to compare that to what's going on in Pahrump and the proposal that's before you guys today. In this originally in Coyote Springs, there was tens of thousands of acre feet of water. We had 2 weeks of hearings back in 2001. There was over 100,000 acre feet of water being filed for in this one basin alone. We had experts from all over, Nevada, California, telling us that they could easily pump 30 to 50,000 acre feet of water out of this basin. Hugh Ritchie and myself, there was probably 4 weeks of hearings after we got done with everything, and what they were telling us and what our experiences were on the ground there just weren't adding up. So Hugh went through and we issued an order for a pump test. And this pump test took them a while to get it off the ground, unfortunately, but it took them 8 years to just get through the bureaucracy of getting things done. And they required just to pump 50% of the water that was out there in the one basin. And it was a mitigating disaster when they did it. Within months, if not less, there was drawdowns throughout the whole thing, spatially speaking, all the way from Apex up into northern Coyote Springs Valley, a distance of 20, 30 miles, saw impacts within weeks. This whole system was tied together, and it eventually became through another order. As you can see on the picture here, everything within this area, the lower part is of the picture is Coyote Springs Valley. When everything got done, they combined Coyote Springs Valley, Muddy, California Wash, Hidden Valley, Garnet, and a portion of Black Mountain into one basin, administratively what they call the Lower White River Flow System now. LWRFS for short. I do have client there, my partner and I do. And they've gone from a number of thinking 30 to 50,000 acre feet that can be pumped in this basin, and now they're arguing about whether that number is 6,000 to 9,000. Okay, there's a number actually when they did some reverse modeling on it. I call it that. It's a little bit different how they did it, but there's a number that actually says the number should be 4,000 acre feet. So we've gone from 100,000 acre feet, okay, we can pump 30 to 50, no problem. And now we're down to this number of less than, let's say, 10,000, okay? And our client, they got a $200 million investment in that valley. And they've used their water, every bit of their water for 20 years, and it's possible they'll be curtailed and could shut these there's a power plant that could be shut down at some point if it gets too bad. The source of this flow system, we knew that this water was coming in there because the Muddy River discharges 30,000+ acre feet of water a year. So we knew where this water was coming from, and we knew where it was going to. And that's the concept that you always look at least I do when I'm trying to look at some of these sources and how we're trying to figure things out, is visually or spatially, where's this water coming from, and where does it go? Nevada was a dry state, man. This water's got to daylight somewhere, and if it daylighted, people built there, or people built stuff there, or did something in those areas. So, according to this project that I read about in the paper, and when I read this thing about, like I said, I just couldn't comprehend what they were looking for. You know, the goal of the project, I'm taking this out of paper. The goal of the project was to identify whether there's an alternate source of water available in the Carbonate aquifer. If so, confirm development yields, and it does make sense on that part, and whether the water quality is suitable for municipal supply. Well, most carbonate water is, unless it's an arsenic issue generally, but you can treat for that. Total exploration cost $4.1 million to do this. So I'm like, wow, okay, that's crazy. This is spatially where they were talking about, and they don't identify. They identify the Trout Canyon area as a watershed, which is draining in that area. But they don't discuss anything about where they think this water is actually coming from. Is it limited to just that spot? Is it limited to upgrading area? And you don't ever see in literature about a lot of inflow. When you look at the basins that are in the carbonate system and a carbonate flow system, you will see that there's a lot of water flowing out of these basins subterraneously and showing up other places, hence the Muddy River. Okay. Here, you don't have any signs of this water showing up anywhere. You got a little bit of water coming out of Deer Spring up there in the mountain and stuff, and it flows down and then it goes back into the alluvium. So, part of my questions were in this thing of, okay, where's this potential alternate source of water coming from, and is it available in the Carbonate aquifer? Is it just the Trout Canyon watershed? And my other question I always ask, where's this potential alternate source of water going to? Okay, we don't see it daylighting anywhere in Death Valley. We don't see these type of waters daylighting anywhere. And what does it matter in the sense of, how does this compare to Pahrump? And I'm going to change my presentation just a little bit at this point and talk about, and it'll come up again in a minute, but talk about a slide that was in a presentation when I was at the Division of Water Resources in February 1st, 2007. And you have to also look at these things conceptually. So let's say that I'm going to talk about later that there's just no water there, that's a new source. But let's say I'm wrong, okay? Let's say that they go out there and they find 5,000 acre-feet of water from a new source, unidentified previously on any hydrologic study that's ever been done in this area, okay? The current perennial yield of Pahrump is still Pahrump Valley, it's still Pahrump Basin. The current perennial yield is, depending on what literature you want to look, is 12,000 to 19,000 a year, okay? You add that 5,000 to that makes it 17,000 to 24,000. Let's say that number's still wrong, and it's off by 50%, okay? That 24,000 becomes 36,000 acre-feet of water of perennial yield that's coming into the Pahrump Basin. We know that that number's not that large because when they did pump historically in the 60s and 70s, and they exceeded that 40,000 range and well into the 30,000 range, water levels crashed. And so we know the number's not that big, but let's go with 36,000. Let's just say, I'm going to give them every benefit of the doubt along the way. You're at 36,000. You still have 56,000 acre-feet of commitments, not counting domestic wells. Okay, so we're still, with all those things, you're still over appropriated by 18,000 acre-feet of water. So even if you give every benefit of the doubt, it's not a new source of water that can be used to build another 6,000, 5,000 homes. Okay, it's just not there in the math. I mean, they screwed up, way before I started. When I was born, probably before I was born, they were issuing too much water rights in Pahrump, okay? So it's just not there. I'm working from the present backwards. October 2nd of 2012, Jason King gave a presentation in this room, very well attended, shall I say, and a lot of attention. did an excellent job, as he always does. He showed this conceptual view of the groundwater flow, and there's a difference between carbonate rock and carbonate flow systems. The stuff I was showing you guys in Muddy River and stuff is a carbonate flow system. We have carbonate rock all over Nevada. And in the Muddy River area, Coyote Springs, you drill a well there and it's pumping 4,000 gallons a minute, 5 to 10 feet of drawdown. You can go up into basins around that area and you're in the carbonate rock and you pump 100 gallons a minute and you're getting 50 to 100 foot of drawdown. The stuff that's happening in Muddy was just, I mean, it's ridiculous. Or I say Coyote Springs, Muddy River area. The amount of water that comes out of those wells is crazy, okay? And we did do a video on a well, just side note, on one of our wells that the casing collapsed and there was a break in the casing, and the cavern, the amount of caverns and stuff you see in that structure is pretty crazy. So October 2nd, 2012, right here in this room, Mr. King talked about management options. And I've highlighted the important ones I want to point forward. Is distribution of production wells. You gotta spread things out. Import water from other basins. Develop water in other parts of the basins. Now 1 and 3 are pretty much the same thing. Okay? We come back now, this is the one that I talked about before. This is a presentation we gave Tracy, Jason, myself, and Mr. Hicklebottom. We gave this presentation to the water purveyors February 1st, 2007. We said the same thing: dispersed pumpage, available alternate sources of water, interbasin transfers, not within the basin. You got to go outside the basin. September of 1999, I came to Pahrump, gave a presentation. I remember this presentation, it was at night. I went through the whole water right process. I did the same thing. September of 1999, dispersed pumpage, importation. You have to go outside the basin. And I remember specifically at this presentation, somebody said something about importing water. I said, it doesn't matter if you start the paperwork now, you start the easements now, and if you just even did a mile a year, you're going to get somewhere. In this case now, 20 years later, you'd have 25 miles of pipeline done or easements done for something, okay? Now, this goes into what they were talking about in the area they want to go. We've said multiple times, where this, I put a yellow arrow on this that you can see, and I know you can't see a laser. I'm not using one, but if I had one, you couldn't use it to see it. This water in this area coming is generally flowing in the direction of this arrow. Give or take a little bit, don't hold me exactly to that. It's coming out, and we're probably losing that water out of the basin to California. And as far as I'm concerned, nothing should ever go to California. So there is a source of water there that's within the natural flow of the basin. And I think the recommendation is, and these are my recommendations, these are me personally, I've spoke to nobody about it, no board members, nobody's gonna get in trouble, these are my words. Under no circumstances should we be looking for a quote new source of water. But I do believe that you can spend money, and I'm going to go back one slide, and you come into this area and you drill, and I don't know exactly what's out there in the way of wells and stuff, because I haven't done anything really looked in Pahrump for quite a while. But I'm sorry, so I did just read this. Right off the yellow arrow, there's some wells in there and stuff. And when you're looking for contour elevations, you need, generally speaking, you need 3 wells. So you could probably come in here and spend some money and drill 1 or 2 wells to get yourself some triangulation and develop a contour, a water level contour. Off of that contour, you could then develop a gradient. And off of that gradient, then your experts could then come in and calculate the amount of flow that is going past that area into California. So then, once you got all that done, and you got it, and these are numbers obviously that have error, some errors in them and stuff, but you can go forward from there. Once you do that, then you can do a cost-benefit analysis about putting the water system up there and moving municipal water up there and piping it into the valley. And that will help your system, your basin tremendously. And then you can go in, you take some of that money. I still think they should do it. I think Buco did this a while back. You need to start looking at alternate sources of water and outlying hydrographic basins. And you need to file water right applications in those basins, and which obviously requires cooperation before Northern and Southern Nye County. But I also think that you should be going to the table and speaking with SNWA, because I don't know if they're going to pursue all that stuff out there. And then you've got a 1989 priority if you do that. So that's where I'm at with this. What's going on there? Even if you found water, it's not going to be beneficial in the basin itself. It's still the basin. And I'll just leave it at that. If you guys got any questions for me, I think I made my 10 minutes or came close.
Well, it was an excellent presentation. I love the idea about triangulating those and creating those figuring out what those contours are to capture water that we will need. So I think you've done an excellent job of showing this commission what alternatives we also have outlying to us.
Thank you for the presentation.
All right.
Commissioner Glenda, you have anything? Questions? Commissioner Coache?
When you stated, and I quote, you said that's crazy about the $4.1 million total for the exploration costs. What makes it so? Why do you feel that's crazy?
It's not the cost factor in itself. It's the fact that they're spending $4.1 million to look for an alternate source of water to build. My understanding when I read this article was that they wanted to find an alternate source of water that's separate and apart from everything else in the Pahrump Valley, so they could take that water and I think they said build another 5,000 or 6,000 homes. That's what's crazy, because if you did, as I went through my example, if you did find the 5,000 acre feet, or you did, let's say 3,000 to build 6,000 homes, it's already accounted for. And it's already over appropriated, so you're not going to get this magic source of water that is going to be separate and apart from what you're currently pumping and what you're currently in your bank account, let's say, and to be able to bring that into the valley and use it. And as an example too, the examples I was telling you about in the Lower White River flow system, right today, they're building a pipeline now from Vegas into that basin, into the whole, it's going to hit Garnet Valley first, where the Love's gas station is there. But they're building a pipeline now into that, to those basins to supply water because of what's going on.
One brief follow-up question. In one of your slides, it's under the previous state engineer presentations, groundwater management options. Do you agree with the prescribed list of options that we should be addressing?
Yes.
Thank you.
Commissioner Coache, you have anything, or you can move on?
No, I'm fine.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Coache.
All right, thank you.
Item number